This is one of the many paranormal experiences I've had. Arguably, the most terrifying, converting one of the eyewitnesses from a skeptic to completely believing in the paranormal and actually taking it seriously. My friends and I have always been quite fond of going out urbex exploring. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's when you go out and look for abandoned and derelict buildings to explore and photograph. We didn't go out searching for the haunted side of things. We just enjoyed the eeriness and also the beauty of old abandoned places. Living in Scotland, a lot of these abandoned places are normally surrounded by amazing scenery, from hills and mountains to thick forests and lush fields. So we always made a day of it when we did go exploring. One house in particular was our favorite, so much so that we had already visited a couple of times prior to this experience. Myself and two of my best friends, we'll call them C and B, decided to go back, but the condition of the place had declined quite rapidly since the last time we had been, and everything seemed very unstable. But we didn't let that stop us. Finding that our usual entry spot had been boarded up, we felt quite defeated, but decided to look for another entry anyway. After searching around for a while, we noticed that the roof on one of the lower parts of the house had been damaged by fire and was practically all gone. It wasn't the easiest to get up to, using a tree and each other to do so, but we finally got in. It was going relatively normal. We were wandering around the inside, searching and admiring the rooms we could still get into, being terrified by the occasional bird, being spooked by our footsteps, and taking photos of the amazing architecture. However, something was different this time. The whole place felt off and a little more eerie than it normally did. I've always been what you would describe as spiritually inclined, so I felt this more than my friends did. One of them was a complete skeptic, so he just brushed it off and said we were over-exaggerating and making things up. His mind was going to be completely changed after leaving this house. After exploring the top 3 floors as much as we could, cringing at the spray paint art the vandals had left, we were on the ground floor, just having a chat and discussing how much the house's condition had really declined. We were standing in one of the hallways, almost in a triangle formation. I was standing in a doorframe with my back toward the empty room, with C to my left and B to my right. I was still feeling a little uneasy, but I didn't give much thought to it. As we were all conversing about the plans for the rest of the day, I felt something on my back. It felt like someone had run their hand down my back. From the base of my neck to the center of my back, I felt a firm, consistent pressure, until the pressure tapered off down to the base of my back. It was over within seconds. I felt all the color drain from my face as I frantically jumped forward with a scream. B and C both looked at me in confusion and asked what had happened and if I had hurt myself. In a haze of confusion and dizziness, I wasn't able to form any words, never mind describing what I had just felt. I regained my bearings and took a couple of deep breaths before trying my best to explain the sensation of being touched. B's face turned a little pale as she saw how serious I was being. However, C was a skeptic. He laughed and thought I was joking, or that I had accidentally hit something without realizing, or a bug had hit me. I knew that wasn't the case, because for a split second before it happened, I felt every single hair on my body stand up, as a warning to what was about to happen. Being slightly freaked out, B and myself managed to convince C that it was time to leave. On top of what had just happened, it was also getting a little cold. While making our way to the same section we had entered through, I started to feel a burning sensation run down my back, like someone had taken hot coals or a flame down my back. Starting to freak out again, I asked B to check if anything was there. Asking her what was wrong, I automatically knew something was wrong because she did not give me a response. She was just silent. Next thing I knew, B was calling over C to come and look, which made my anxiety spike up more. From the look on C's face, I became increasingly worried. They both nervously told me that there were marks going down my back. Obviously, not being able to see my back myself, I then asked them to take a photo for me to see. Looking at the photo, there were 3 distinctive scratches going down my back, exactly where I'd felt someone or something touch me. Looking at that photo still gives me uneasy feelings to this day. At first, C was convinced I had done it myself, or caught myself on something, but after examining the scratches more, he determined that it couldn't have been. The scratches went under my bra strap, which would have been impossible for me to do without them noticing. At this point, we were all trying to keep our calm, while internally freaking out. We tried to make our way out as quick as we could without injuring ourselves. Climbing back over the wall of the house and through the hole where the roof used to be, we collectively walked a few feet away from the house and stopped to look back at it, still trying to understand what had just happened. We all agreed that we'd go back to the car and never come back here. The walk back to the car, which took around 20 minutes, was relatively uneventful, apart from the continuous uneasy feeling that we were being watched or followed, and occasionally thinking we could hear footsteps behind us. It was actually quite peaceful. Taking in the Scottish countryside, we got into the car, where we sat and had a smoke, still trying to completely calm ourselves down. It's safe to say that after that day, C took a long time to process the events, but undoubtedly became a believer. We swore never to come back to this house, but for some reason, we're always drawn back to it. It's like an urge to come back and visit, like an itch that you can't quite scratch. Maybe we're just drawn in by the eeriness or the mystery around that day, or maybe it's something more than that. This happened to me and my friend around 9:30 p.m. on a Saturday, if I recall. I live in an area where not much goes on, and it's pretty safe for the most part. Anyways, me and my friend are dumb teenagers, both male, that love urban exploring. Our favorite sites to explore are tunnels. Around 7:30 p.m. one night, me and my friend were exploring some sites around the park, 2 blocks away from our house, full of small tunnels to explore. We felt a little weird, because we felt as if we weren't alone. There were a couple of disc golfers, but we had just watched them leave. So at this point, the park was completely empty. My friend and I were just exiting a small tunnel to get back to the park as we were waiting for the disc golfers to leave so we could get to the next secret spot, which were train tracks that are sometimes in use. To get to the train tracks, you have to go through an off-path in the woods that has a few curves, so it was hard to see. My friend led the way. A few seconds later, I thought I had lost him, so I yelled his name. Here's when things got weird. I heard what seemed almost like a distant yell or a shout from the train tracks. I thought he had sped up, so I jogged up ahead and eventually ran into my buddy that was just around a curvy turn. I asked him if he was okay, and he replied yes, like nothing had happened. A little suspicion ran through my mind, so I asked him if he had yelled at me from the tracks and had come back to get me. Shockingly, he didn't. He was waiting for me just at the turn, and he also said he heard the yell. Well, my friend and I are idiots. Instead of going back, we quietly continued to the tracks. When we got up to the bridge with the train tracks, there was absolutely no one or nothing up there. Although, I felt like we were being watched from the trees or something. I let my friend know about this feeling, and we quickly stopped throwing rocks into the creek and headed back to the park. I knew something was wrong as we were leaving. I just couldn't put my finger on it. We played around on the basketball court at the park before we left. Due to the creepy vibe, my friend and I decided it was best to take the main road back instead of the shortcut through the woods that led to our neighborhood. It was around 9:30 now. My friend and I were talking about what we should do all night because he was spending the night. The park has a soccer field across the street from it, so it has 2 gravel parking lots that are sorta hidden by the trees. As we were walking past one of the gravel lots, I felt what seemed like a warning from my body. I passed it off as nothing, but as we crossed the street from the gravel lot, here's when things started getting really creepy. I could see someone come out of the shadows of the gravel lot. They had appeared to be wearing very dark clothing and a hoodie to cover their face. It was throwing red flags everywhere. The way they came out of nowhere was so subtle and perfectly timed. It felt as if they were waiting for us to cross, to start following us. My friend hadn't seemed to notice the strange figure. I told him to jog up ahead a bit. He seemed confused, so I pulled him close to me and told him what had just happened. He seemed anxious, so we picked up the pace. Every once in a while, I would look over my shoulder to see where he was. Every time I looked, he would be at least 3 feet closer to us. I could hear the figure's eerie breathing. Thank God we were close to an alley shortcut that no one really uses but me and my friends. To get to it, you have to go up a little hill, left of the street. I saw this as an opportunity. I mumbled to my friend, "Use the alley." He quickly nodded yes. The second we made it to the hill, we casually jogged up ahead to the alley. I told my friend to wait for a second. I peeked over to the street from the alley, and there I saw them. What appeared to be the man in his 30s was making his way towards us very quickly. I could see his eyes now. They were staring directly at me with an evil look. I told my friend to bolt up the damn alley to his house, which was connected to the alley. We had never ran so damn fast. We made it up to the street and take a sharp turn to the left. We had lost him at this point. We sprinted through his front door and locked every single entrance. We turned off all the lights and hid for what felt like an hour. Thank God he was nowhere to be seen. I've never seen this person ever again, and I hope not to. This encounter happened to me and my best friend sometime back in 2000 or 2008. We were both women in our early 20s and sharing an apartment in a major metro area. Not a small town, but not a big city either. Through the short stretch of woods behind our apartment complex, there was a neighborhood of single-family homes. Typical suburban cul-de-sac, American middle-class neighborhood, except that this neighborhood was completely unoccupied. Like I said, it was around 07 or 08, so the effects of the American recession were still in full swing. A developer had bought the neighborhood and all the houses to tear down. They had built a nice shiny new street from the main road to the neighborhood. But money probably ran out before the homes could be bulldozed. At least, that's my best guess, as there were several stalled construction projects in the area that had met the same fate. There was nothing in the immediate area in the way of shops, stores, or gas stations. Just empty residential homes. A bit eerie, but nothing overtly creepy. Being young, adventurous, and having some daytime hours free due to our retail jobs, my bestie and I liked to go on walks in this abandoned neighborhood. There was a short path through some woods, and then you came out onto the main neighborhood street, which started out gravel and turned into asphalt, toward the nicer end of the neighborhood, with the bigger, newer houses. We'd walk up and down, shooting the shit, maybe surreptitiously hitting a joint, just being young and carefree. One of the homes looked to have a few acres of land, and there was a big field where we'd take blankets and go lay in sometimes. So on the day this encounter takes place, the sun was shining and there was a brilliant blue sky, probably late summer or early fall. I can't remember exactly, aka broad daylight. Like I said earlier, the neighborhood was a bit eerie, but on that day, we felt pretty safe. We were on one of our midday, abandoned neighborhood strolls when we see a car on the street, headed our direction. This was the first time we had ever seen a vehicle there. It was a small blue hatchback. I don't know cars very well, so that's the most specific description I can come up with. Neither one of us got a good look at the driver's face, but we see there are two people in the car. All I can make out is that the driver is male, white, and has brown hair, wearing a blue and white raglan t-shirt. The car rumbles past us on the gravel road and out of sight. We continue on, thinking it was odd, but not that odd. A few minutes later, the car comes back from the direction it came, passing us from behind. It drives out of sight over this little hill, and we figure maybe they got turned around, since there's obviously nothing of interest on this road, except this abandoned subdivision. And we continue walking for another couple of minutes. We reach the little hill, and as we get to the top, we see the car that just drove past us. The car was stopped on the road a little ways ahead of us, just sitting there with its brake lights on. That's when I notice the person in the passenger seat is gone. I find this odd and start internally questioning whether I even saw the passenger at all, until my friend says, "Wasn't there another person?" My hackles start to go up, and I'm creeped out at this point. Something about the way the car is just sitting there, idling, like they're waiting for us. There's nothing of interest behind us, where he could have dropped off his passenger, which makes their absence very unsettling. I don't know how long we were standing there, staring at this car, possibly with the driver's accomplice having been dropped off behind us, and the car in front of us lying in wait. But it felt like forever. I had a cold, heavy feeling in my stomach. My friend and I are both frozen to the spot, hair on the back of our necks standing up. Mental alarm bells ringing. It's dawning on me that no one knows where we are. While I'm standing there, frozen in fear, brain frantically trying to figure out how long it would be until my boyfriend would get off work and discover us missing, the car started backing up towards us, fast. As the car accelerates backwards towards us, my friend and I come to our senses and tear off toward the woods, cutting through the backyard of one of the abandoned houses. And we frantically bushwhack our way through the short stretch of woods and come out on the opposite side of our apartment complex and run like hell until we reach our building. I have no idea what that driver was doing, what their intentions were, or where his passenger disappeared to. Creepy driver, let's not meet. Hey guys, so me and my girlfriend were reminiscing about Halloween's pre-pandemic, and it reminded me of Halloween 2018. I thought it was a story worth telling. So, here goes. So I live in the UK, and relatively near where I live is an old mental asylum. It's been abandoned and run down for a good few years now. It's patrolled by an old dude with a big dog, who apparently owns or caretakes the land. Although, he's only usually there during the day, and at night, goes home, unsurprisingly. The asylum was featured on an episode of Most Haunted a good few years back, which makes the place ripe for attention from the locals. in the twilight hours once the patrolling dude is gone. I'd only been a few times prior to this. It was usually relatively busy, but usually infested with thrill-seeking teenagers and a few potheads looking for a quiet place to get stoned, without hassle, from the local bobbies. Occasionally, you would get a few groups of chavs, British slang for teenage troublemakers to summarize without derailing the story, trying to start fights, but you were usually okay in a group. Anyways, in I think 2018, me and a group of my friends and my girlfriend decided to go there on Halloween night for some ghost hunting. We ended up going way later than intended, so it was actually November 1st, about 2 a.m. by the time we arrived. But hey, no biggie. We dodged the crowds. There were 5 of us: myself, my girlfriend, who I will call K, my friend A, his girlfriend M, and his other friend D. There's a small section of tree line you need to follow to get to the entrance, so we started heading through that when we see a bunch of guys walking over. D starts stressing, thinking it's the police, because it's technically trespass. But me and A start reassuring him it's fine. One of the dudes shouted something like, "Security, stay where you are." Sounded like a Birmingham accent. Maybe Cannock or Wolverhampton, but definitely Midlands-ish. So not very local to us, but that doesn't really mean anything necessarily. However, A, who comes here a lot, as he lives a 3-minute walk away or something basically, replies with, "They don't have security here. Nice try, mate." And the dudes just all kind of laugh and go, "You got us." We all laughed, and that was fine. No big deal there, we thought. We go around exploring, but Kay tells me that after we went past those 3 guys, they turned off their torches. This place is insanely dark, so this is odd in itself, and she feels as though we are being followed. I tell the others. D started freaking out. A and M assure us it's all fine. Another thing I should note is that these guys weren't the average people you would see at this place. They looked to be in their mid to late 40s, all quite big and broad. Not a usual sight for an asylum at 2 a.m. As we're going around, we hear something landing behind us. We look behind trying to work out what it was, but we didn't see anything. A few more things start landing. Stones were being thrown in our direction from somewhere. We couldn't see where. I kind of figured they were coming from one of the nearby windows and start shouting up at the windows a few expletives at whoever was throwing them. They stayed silent, just occasionally throwing more. After A and K both got hit by a stone, we all determined it was time to leave and started to go. D and K basically wanted to run off, but A convinced us that they're likely just trying to scare us, so not to panic or run. So we casually walked off, shouting a few expletives as more stones got hurled our way. We managed to get around the rest of the asylum without much hassle. Had a gander around. We were heading back toward the car via a different route across a field near the edge where there was another window. I told the guys that I thought I saw some people, coming out of the small door at the bottom. A shined his torch over, and sure enough, it's the same three guys from earlier. No torches on, seemingly coming from the route we had just taken. Almost as if they had been following us. Just to elaborate, as we were entering initially, they were heading toward one of the exits, so it seemed as though as they were leaving when we arrived. And then we put two and two together and concluded they were likely the ones lobbing stones at us, as the projectiles came from a window to the building we had just been in. We walked back along the field. The dudes followed, but slowly. Not as if they were trying to catch us. It was no biggie. By the time we got to our car, they were way out of sight. I don't think these dudes intended any harm for us, other than the occasional dunk by a stone. They were likely just trying to scare us. Either way, me and them both felt very on edge. K and D were panicking and stressing the whole way around. Those two were terrified. A seemed quite calm about the whole thing, if not a bit annoyed. But it definitely was something that creeped me out, and something that kept us talking for the night. Today, there was a test of the civil defense siren in the region I live in, and the sound of it brought back a memory of something I have not thought about for years. In my country, it is common for these sirens to be placed on school buildings, and so it is memorable the few times a year those would be tested. Back when I was in middle school, at the age of 14, I was like most other kids my age, just trying to fit in. In my case, that meant I was trying to blend into the crowd of the school's older emo kids. I was attending a creative course, and because the entire school ground was getting renovated, there were multiple old buildings that were going to be demolished. Because of this, me and some other emo kids were pretty much allowed to do whatever we wanted with those buildings for an art project and for the upcoming school fair. So we were painting random stuff on the walls and painting the stairs into waterfalls and such. On this day, we were getting close to the end of our project. It was the end of the day, so school was pretty much empty, and the sirens were going to be tested. Funnily enough, those sirens that probably originated way back from World War II were placed on the top of the abandoned school building where said event was going to happen. Among the emo kids, there was this guy who was a few years older than me that I always found very weird, called Paul. The only way to describe him is that it was like he was constantly pretending to be unpredictable and batshit crazy for laughs. Most of the time, this just meant that he was clowning around. He was friends with another emo guy my age, Andrew, who was openly obsessed with me. He was a very annoying daily thing I had to deal with, who constantly followed me around school, saying weird sexual stuff and sniffing my hair. But despite his stalkerish behavior, it never went past that. Paul, too, had soon joined in on Andrew following me around, and so I skipped school a lot, because no one wanted to take me seriously. They thought I was just being whiny about this comedic duo of pursuers, and even my mother would laugh if I complained about it. Despite them both being creepy and annoying, I felt bad for them both. Because Andrew was getting bullied for being feminine and gay, even though he clearly was not, given how he acted around me. And I felt bad for Paul, because I knew he came from a very tragic and troubled home. Anyways, I was walking downstairs from where some of my friends were painting to the empty first floor so I could go outside of the building. The sirens had started, and it was so loud it was impossible to hear anything, except during those small breaks. Suddenly, someone grabbed me before I could manage to get outside, and just moved me into this other hallway, where a wall blocked any view from the entrance of the building. He literally held his hand in front of my mouth, as he suddenly pushed me and lifted me up against the brick wall there. So I was shocked and kind of out of breath. As he faced me, I saw it was that weirdo Paul. It was, for the record, very tall, compared to my tiny frame. The sirens were going off loudly, and he did not say anything, just stared at me with completely crazy eyes. Back then, I was so completely innocent, and the fact that he could do anything bad did not cross my mind right away. I just nervously laughed while I said that he scared me and asked him to please put me down. But he did not, and I was starting to freak out because no one could hear me or knew where I was. Just then, before anything could happen, this older emo girl, who was one of my friends, appeared peeking out of the corner because she was looking for me. When she saw what was going on, she did not hesitate for a moment as she walked over screaming at Paul and kicked him as hard as she could in the knee. He dropped me as he crouched down in pain, and my friend just grabbed my shoulder and brought me outside to the schoolyard. After that, we did not really talk about it, just called him a creep and laughed it off. During my last few years in middle school, I drifted away from that crowd, as they were all older and moving on to high school. As I've grown older and wiser, I've come to realize just how close I had come to something really bad happening back then. Because of the sirens, no one would have been able to hear my scream. And because we were in that abandoned building, there was a lot of secluded rooms he could have dragged me to. So I'm still so thankful that my old friend walked in before he could have done anything. Without her, this story might have been very different. Lastly, I'd like to add that I saw this guy again in high school because he was dating a friend of a friend who was a year younger than me, meaning she was about 16 and him 19. He was often waiting around school grounds for her to finish classes, and even though I tried avoiding him, he ran up and hugged me once. I felt very uncomfortable and just sort of froze. After that, I told my friend that he was not a right person, and she said she knew he was abusive to a friend. Hey guys, thank you all for the support. I hope you're enjoying the content. So why don't you do me a favor and give this video a like and a comment? And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It would really help my channel out. And of course, stay up to date by hitting that notification button. Thanks very much, guys.